Hi, guys. Welcome to the live. This is Kim Howerton. I am glad to be joining you tonight via StreamYard. So, depending where you're watching me, you may be able to comment, and I'd love to see your questions. So, type in on the comments, and I'll be able to see them and hopefully answer them. If I don't answer your question right away, I might be just talking about something else or behind. So feel free to ask it again and I'll hopefully see it and get to it. And if I don't see it and or I don't get to it, it's not because I have any feelings about you. Please don't take it personally. It's just that I can't get to everything all the time. So I'm back wearing my Aura ring. That's what this is. I got a new one. My old one died. Got a new one finally. Hey guys, nice to have you. See you. I see Andrea from Chicago. Lodi, Rita, I'm doing just fine today. I just got back. Well, my hair's a little wet still in the back. I went for a walk this afternoon. Got my steps in. See, according to my Aura ring, I'm about to hit. Oop, I'm about to hit 10,000 steps. I'm at 9,865. It's very close. And went for my walk and then realized, oh, I need to get in the shower. So I just got out and glad to be joining you for tonight's live. I can't not take a shower after a walk unless it's like a little stroll. I don't feel like, even if I don't feel gross, I still feel like I need to refresh before I face the world. Um, via the internet. Not that you can smell me or anything like that, but Anyway, so tonight's beverage selections, I have some. Hey, Pinky, I literally started like 3 minutes ago. Don't even worry about it. Barely missed anything. So I have the coffee I didn't finish this afternoon. Still good. Still fine. Totally fine. And then this is it's red. It's passion tea. You know that Starbucks tea, their passion tea? I really like it. And so I just buy that tea at Target from Tazo, and then I brew it at home. I should say my boyfriend brews it. It's it's funny how you have like these little divisions of labor in your relationships. Does anyone have that? Like, I cook this stuff, you cook that stuff. He does tea, so he made the pitcher of iced tea that's in the fridge that I'm drinking. So it's very nice. Hey, New Zealand. Glad we could make this work time wise for our New Zealand friends. And I'm in that weird hour where the sun is about to go down as it gets darker earlier here in the United West Coast of the United States, the East Coast, already dark. We had torrential rain on Sunday here in the Bay Area, which we desperately needed. It would have been nice if it was stretched out a little more, but beggars can't be choosers, and we were definitely beggars for water here in California. Jamie says, hey, Jamie in Chicago, having surgery tomorrow, need ideas for protein shakes. Okay, so since you're having surgery tomorrow, congratulations. Sorry, that's not the right kind. I'm glad you're having whatever you're having done in a way that hopefully is safe and makes you happy and you're better on the other side. That's what I want to say. And in terms of protein shakes, I'm going to say it's pretty unlikely that you're going to get anything in the mail by tomorrow, and you probably need it soon. So you're probably talking about things that you can get over the counter, like in a store, I assume, unless it's a stretched out process. So in terms of what's available in the store, surprisingly, Target has a great selection, some Targets anyway, of protein shakes. So at the end of the day, protein shakes, they aren't perfect, but they are a lot better than not having protein. So I certainly support them in the surgery, if there's a surgical issue. I have to say there are a couple of ready to drink shakes that aren't horrible. Quest makes a ready to drink shake that I think it has 3 grams of carbs, 30 grams of protein, and the flavors are not bad. Their vanilla is actually surprisingly good. And if you mix it with coffee, it tastes like a vanilla latte. So if you need an emergency protein shake, I think that one's not the worst. In terms of powders that they're out there on the market now, you can get Amazon overnight usually, but so you could get other options. The thing to know about protein powders, generally speaking, is they come in a variety of forms, right? So I may be telling you way more than you wanted to know about protein powders. Dairy protein powders, there are 2 kinds. Well, and then there are mixes of those two kinds. So when you take, so how they make protein powder, right? They take the protein from milk or runoff from, usually it's runoff from making cheese in a lot of ways. And then they take those proteins and they then isolate those proteins and make them protein powders. You always want to buy, when you're looking for protein powders, isolates, not concentrates. Isolates is isolated. So you're just really getting the protein. They're not going to have the lactose, they're not going to have the sugars. On the other side, you've got concentrates, which includes more of it's not isolated protein, so it's got higher carbs, and it generally speaking gives people a stomach ache much more than an isolate will. So not as high quality. Avoid the concentrates. In terms of which isolate, if you're doing a dairy protein, they come in two forms: whey and casein, and then there's something called a milk protein isolate, which is what, by the way, Keto Chow uses, a milk protein isolate, which is a combination of casein and whey. So it's sort of like as if that protein was still in the original dairy product. It comes in that 80-20, 80% casein, 20% whey. You'll hear a lot of people, whey protein powder is certainly the most popular protein powder on the market, especially with weightlifters. Why is that? Whey protein is absorbed very, very quickly, which means that if you are using it in an attempt to increase muscle growth through muscle protein synthesis, there is a slight advantage to that fast acting whey. The downside for some of us who are not weightlifters and who are insulin resistant is that faster absorption means more of an insulin response. Now, am I super concerned about that for most people? Not really, but just, forewarned is forearmed. But that on the other side means that people get hungrier faster unless they do something to mitigate that rapid absorption. Whereas casein is absorbed very slowly, and so that's why a milk protein isolate, which is a combination of the two, is going to absorb slower and probably feel more fulfilling. So anyway, that's my little lesson. The thing though is casein gets very thick. It thickens. It sits in your stomach longer. It thickens. It gets it's more pudding like consistency than it is shake consistency, which can be useful and you can use for your advantage. So like I have some chocolate casein pudding and I add milk to it slowly, and not milk, almond milk. You kind of drizzle it in slowly and stir it. And when it gets to the consistency of pudding, you just stop adding water and then it's pudding, which I like better than a shake. Anyway, so hopefully that gave you some information about it. So the ready to drinks, I think, in my opinion, the Quest probably tastes the best and I have the least digestive issues. You might be different. And that one is whey protein. It's all whey protein. I would probably recommend for the people that are worried about the insulin response and want a more filling meal-like experience than just a quick hit of protein. Those people I would direct towards milk protein concentrate, which is the kind that Keto Chow has. There are also other ones that you can get on the market, or you can combine it yourself by getting a whey protein and a casein protein on Amazon and then mixing them together. So if you're very, very insulin resistant and you're really concerned about it, and you need to use protein powder, obviously, make a pudding out of casein protein instead. I find that a little more filling and a slower absorption and can be beneficial. The brands of casein protein that I have tried are Legion and Ascent, and both are very good. All right, hopefully. Angie said, what do I think about Premier protein shakes? I probably think they're about the same as Quest, but I honestly haven't looked at the ingredients in a while. Almost all these protein powders, by the way, people use sucralose as their sweetener, including Keto Chow. I'm not that concerned about sucralose, but some people try to avoid it. So there are protein powders on the market, like Equip is a beef protein isolate. So if you want to be dairy free, but you want a high quality protein, Equip is a good brand. They're popular and so often out of stock. So, and you buy it on the internet, Amazon sells it. The chocolate's definitely my favorite. I don't like, a lot of times vanilla shakes can taste sort of too fakey. They all taste fakey, but a little less fakey. And that uses Stevia, that's the word. And then I think the Legion also uses stevia and not sucralose. So, but you can poke around on the ingredient list and see what you think. But again, if you're in an experience where like you're have a surgery, you're healing, you need something short term, you're not going to be eating it forever. There are different considerations to take into consideration to have a very awkward sentence. Um, Miss Cindy says, Kim, I've been taking magnesium for years and love my red bean salt. Do I also need potassium if I feel great? I would say if you eat leafy green vegetables, you're probably okay on potassium. Potassium is in leafy greens. If you eat pork, if you drink bone broth, all of those things have a fair amount of potassium. So I personally wouldn't necessarily think I need that. You can do what you like. I'm trying out a new brand of magnesium they sent me. It's open a little bit. This is Magnesium Breakthrough, and it's a mix. Oh gosh, I can't read. Guys, I'm officially old. I'm gonna have to use the what do you call it? The thing that you can blow up your photo. You scroll in and then you can look at it. It's got magnesium chelate, bisglycinate, sucrum. Oh no, sucrose which is actually oxide, which I tend not to support. I've got malate, orotate, taurine, and citrate. And also it's got fulmic, how do you say it? Monoatomic blend. Woo! Okay. So it's got a bunch of different magnesiums in it. So I'm trying this one out. They sent it to me. I'm trying it. So far, I like it. All right. Miss Cindy says, I do more carnivore. So if you do more carnivore and you're concerned about if you feel great and your blood pressure is great and all those things feel great, I would say you're probably great. If you're concerned about it, then I would include bone broth in your carnivore approach because that'll get you some potassium. And then um, drink, drink. Use the runoff. So when you cook meat and there's juice runoff, incorporate the runoff into your food and make sure you incorporate pork in your diet if you want more potassium. There's a lot of potassium in pork. There's also potassium in beef. So I'm not going to be super worried about it. Going back to see if I missed anything. Jamie says, is there a way to cure insulin resistance? Yes, there is. Uh, can can we change our genetic profile? I think that's a deeper question, right? So like some of us are more inclined to be insulin resistant, but it's like, what do they say? Genetics loads the gun, but you have to pull the trigger, right? So you could have the tendency for your body to want to become more insulin resistant than other people. Um, and your threshold for becoming insulin resistant could be lower, but your actions are what got you insulin resistant, right? And so you can, for most people, reverse that to the point where you're no longer showing any signs of insulin resistance, but your threshold for becoming insulin resistant again may remain lower than it is for most people. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So you have to stay below that threshold to remain out of that zone, but you can remain out of that zone. I think if a certain amount of damage has been done over the years, there are instances because insulin, like type 2 diabetes, as an example, is an extreme form of insulin resistance. And so there are people that have advanced enough diabetes that they can't ever get all the way back to insulin sensitive. But I'm an example of somebody who used to be insulin resistant and am now insulin sensitive, which is the opposite of insulin resistant. So, it absolutely is possible, but it takes effort and it takes staying on top of it. What do you do to reverse insulin resistance? I think it's a multi-pronged approach, and it almost always works best when you start by reducing carbohydrates. When you're insulin resistant, you have a reduced ability to tolerate carbohydrates. So, reducing carbohydrates is definitely the first step. From there, building muscle mass will help. So, adding muscle to your body, even a little bit, is going to help. Losing body fat is going to help. Um, Staying active is going to help. So there are all these different things that are going to help you continue on the path to increase your insulin sensitivity, the opposite of being insulin resistant. And so it is totally possible to do. All righty. Oh, there we go. Nancy said, when you mix up keto chow, how much fat and how much water or milk do you mix in? I'm going to be perfectly honest and say I use protein shakes in weird ways and don't use them the way that they say. I think keto chow is definitely tastiest if you follow the directions on the package. I've done other things with it and it's not as tasty, but when you do it the way that they say to do it with either butter or heavy cream or even avocado oil and water, it's very tasty. When I've tried it with just almond milk, it kind of is not as tasty. Um, so it depends what I want to do with it. When I use keto chow more often, what I tend to do is make my protein frosty, really almost any of the time. I don't really tend to drink a shake. I don't think for the most part we should drink our calories. I think chewing or texture or something that's pudding like, something you have to like heavy enough to lift with a spoon helps satiety. And so for me, that's definitely true. So I tend not to just make a shake for the most part. Rules are meant to be broken. Things happen. I do other things. But if I'm making something, generally speaking, I'm adding a lot of ice and making like a frosty. My recipe for that is on YouTube. You're welcome to check it out. Pretty simple. Just involves a lot of ice and blending. And or I'll use it in a recipe. Like I've been making pumpkin pie and putting the pumpkin pie keto chow in it this season, and that's been great. So I tend to use things in ways that maybe are not traditional. Rita says, what is my take on collagen? I am pro collagen. I think collagen is a great thing. I think adding collagen to your diet is usually helpful in some way. It's at least not hurtful. Now, you can get collagen from whole food sources. You don't have to take a supplement. If you like chicken wings, keep nibbling until you've got all the connective tissue off. You're going to get collagen. Eat short ribs, collagen. Eat any meat on the bone, you're going to get more collagen. Um, but if you want to use a collagen supplement, a good quality one is Bubs, Bubs. Bubs is a good quality one. And there are other good quality ones. But make sure it's like a grass-fed beef collagen, not just a, run-of-the-mill one. There are other brands I just can't off the top of my head think of what they are. There are now. So a good quality collagen is important if you're going to do that. You don't want crap collagen. It's not going to help. And then also be aware that collagen is not a complete protein. So somebody earlier suggested ancient something bone broth protein, which is great, not a complete protein though. So don't consider it a replacement for protein in your diet. It can definitely be a supplement. It can go on top, but make sure you get your minimum protein requirements from complete sources of protein, which is generally my preference for that is real whole foods like meat. If you can't do meat, then doing a complete protein. So for the person that is having surgery, that's why I recommended probably more of a dairy protein isolate. If you don't do dairy, something like a Quip, a beef protein isolate. If you don't do that, even there are multiple choices for protein powders, but I tend not to suggest the vegetarian ones or the vegan ones, rather. The vegan ones. I mean, dairy protein powders are vegetarian. They're just not vegan. I don't recommend the vegan ones. They're not complete sources of protein, but if that's all you can do, there are ways that you can use them. There are blends where they mix like different types of proteins together to get a complete format. What does a complete protein mean? Just so you know, there are 20 amino acids. So protein is just the umbrella term for amino acids. And in your protein sources, there's a collection of these amino acids. There are 20, but 9 of them are considered essential because of those. You cannot make them in your body. You can make some amino acids from other amino acids, combining and recombining. Your body can kind of concoct some things. But those 9, if we don't eat them, we don't have enough of them to survive. We need them to survive long term. I mean, a day is fine. We don't just like drop over. And so we need to ingest them. And so if something is called an incomplete protein, it means it has some amino acids, but not all of those 9 amino acids. You need to make very careful sure. That is a very weird sentence that you're getting them from other places if you're using an incomplete protein. Helene says, what do I suggest is needed for supplements on keto, if any? I think everyone needs to make sure they're getting plenty of sodium, which I don't know that you'd call that a supplement, salt. So make sure you're getting plenty of sodium. That's really the only one that's really super essential. From there, it's very individual, person to person. I think most people could benefit from magnesium because we're just magnesium deficient. 75% of the population is magnesium deficient, not just keto people. So they're just like good general good health rules follow in terms of making sure you're getting your vitamins and minerals that are, what you need. But I don't think there's anything specific that keto people tend to need that the general population doesn't need to pay attention to. It's very individualized in terms of what supplements somebody might need because a supplement, what does that mean? It means in addition to food, right? So you look at what foods you're eating and what you're getting and what you're needing and what you're deficient in, what your blood work shows you might be deficient in, and then you supplement from there. So things like vitamin D3, K2, that's very commonly needed. And it's not just the keto people, it's a lot of people. So I haven't really found in my 5 years keto that there's any specific supplement keto people need that other people don't need to pay attention to be perfectly honest. Um, okay. Terry, hi Kim. I want to thank you again for being a different voice than what I hear on a daily basis. I appreciate your experience and wisdom that you are willing to share. Oh, thanks, Terry. I really appreciate it. It's funny. I think what you're talking about is that I will have more frequently and will often talk about the fact that some people, myself included, need to pay attention to calories, which is not what everybody says on the keto diet. But I also think it's important to bring up that it's not just about calories. And for some people, it's very much not about calories. I think, what is a given, and I will not deviate from until science proves me wrong, right? Is that so there is this idea, right? So calorie deficit, what does that mean? A calorie deficit is when you've eaten fewer calories than your body requires to maintain its weight. And the proof is that you lost weight. So you're in a calorie deficit. You're below your required maintenance calories. But I like to say that a calorie deficit proves itself. So people will often say, I was in a calorie deficit and I didn't lose any weight. Nope, then you weren't in a calorie deficit. What most people are saying is I went to a calculator, it told me what my calorie deficit should be for weight loss, and that number didn't work for me. I believe that 100% because here's the reality. It's, people will talk calories in, calories out. And the misunderstanding is the idea that that's simple, and it's not, it's complicated. Eating in different kinds of ways, depending on what our mitochondria is capable of, depending on what our base metabolic rate is, depending on our hormone disposition, all those things, depending on all those things, it's going to have a different effect on calories out, right? So how many calories we need versus how many calories we use. It's not so simple as a math equation. And so, there was a study recently that my friend Amber O'Hearn posted, and they looked at people who were what they just interpreted to be very insulin resistant, and so they put these groups of people into two groups. One they determined was very insulin resistant, one was not so insulin resistant, and then they put them both on calorically restricted diets, which meant they figured out about what their maintenance calories should be, and then they reduced it by a certain percentage. And they found that the insulin sensitive people, remember I said earlier, it's the opposite in insulin resistant. Insulin sensitive people lost a fair amount of weight, whereas the insulin resistant people, even on the same um, supposed deficit, didn't. Right. So it's not just about calories, but sometimes it's about calories. So it all goes in there. So it's kind of, so that's what I want to say. So so it gets more complex. The short answer, I don't even know where we are with short and long, but is if you've been keto for a while and your insulin sensitivity has improved and you're stalled out, it may be time to look more at calories than maybe you have been. But if you're starting keto, it's probably not that time. And if you are somebody that doesn't lose weight, if you try caloric restriction and it's not working, the reality is you may still have insulin problems. There you go. So, and CT says confused, high fat keto or high protein keto. So that kind of goes back to what I was just talking about. If someone is still significantly insulin resistant, Richard Morris of Two Keto Dudes, his theory that he has discussed has been, and it's not maybe not just his, but he's discussed it the most that I can recall, is that there's in a person that's very insulin resistant, there's mitochondrial dysfunction. You need well functioning mitochondria to get the energy from your body fat. So in theory, right? If you are somebody who calorically restricts, so 2,000 calories you're going to maintain your weight on. I'm just picking some numbers to give you some references, right? And you're like, okay, so theoretically, if I eat 1,500 calories, I should lose around a pound a week. Right? That's the math problem that most people do. But then you find you do that and you honestly are doing that. You're not like cheating once a week, you're not falling off, you're like 100% on point and you're like I lost 0 pounds. What's going on there? His theory is if your insulin levels are still very high, which you can get tested on blood test to check, um, because your mitochondria are not functioning as well as they need to be, you're not able to utilize your body fat as fuel. And so you're just starving and still fat. And so, this can be very frustrating, very, very frustrating. So to RT's question, it looks like from, the pieces that I put together, I think if you're very, very insulin resistant and caloric restriction is not something that works for you, that going high fat keto with sufficient protein, never low protein, but higher fat keto might be more beneficial. Whereas if you are somebody who has regained some insulin sensitivity, like I did, high protein keto might be right for you. So if you're not sure which applies to you and what works for you, then I would say you can try one, see how it goes, and then try the other. Guess and check, people. Hey, Kim from West Florida. Hey, Keisha. Constant sweet taste in my mouth after 4 months carnivore. Interesting. I just think taste buds change. I don't know that I have a real answer for that. All right, let me go back. Sorry, looking. I missed some questions. Hey, Shari, thanks for wishing everyone a good week. Shari says, can you take desiccated thyroid meds if your thyroid is moved? Yes, absolutely, 100%, 1,000%. Yes. It's probably extremely important for people with no thyroid because the conversion is going to be even more difficult. And so taking that natural desiccated thyroid is perfect. You do not need to have a functioning thyroid in any way, shape, or form to take natural desiccated over synthetic. If anyone tells you different, they're lying. By the way, I am not a doctor and nothing I say is medical advice, but I do take natural desiccated thyroid myself. Amy says, why does building muscle mass help with insulin resistance? Fabulous question. So you can think of having muscle mass as your glucose sink. So when you do activity that causes your muscles to contract, so there's something in your muscle called glycogen, which is stored glucose. And your muscles like to stay stocked with glycogen so that they can do activity at any time. Now, muscles are stingy, they don't share glycogen. So once glycogen goes in, it don't come out unless you use it, right? So whereas the liver will put it into your bloodstream, out of your bloodstream, into your bloodstream, out of your bloodstream, into your bloodstream, the muscles won't. They take it and they keep it until they use it. And so that glycogen, stored glucose, needs to be topped off at all times. So if you are doing resistance training and building your muscles so they're bigger, you have a bigger sink. You have a bigger storage for that. And then every time you use your muscles and you use up some of that glycogen, it wants more. It's hungry. And so it'll suck more of that in from your bloodstream. So the more muscle mass you have and the more you use your muscles, the more your muscles become sort of glucose absorbent, which is going to help with your blood sugar control. In fact, taking a 10-minute walk after each meal has been found to be as effective, I believe, as use of metformin in terms of blood sugar management. Something good to know. 10-minute walk, that's really simple. In the winter, just walk around your house for 10 minutes if it's snowing. Although, getting cold is also useful sometimes. But don't slip on any ice. So that's one way. The other thing is that's really interesting is using your muscles, working that muscle, that uptake of glucose into the muscle cell does not require insulin. So whereas if you have too much glucose in your body and it needs to be taken up into your organs, like your liver, that requires insulin to put that glucose in the organs and then also into your fat cells. However, the muscle has a separate action and doesn't require insulin. So it's insulin, what's it called? Not insulin, non-insulin mediated. There's some term for it, but basically the muscle will absorb that glucose without raising your insulin. So these are all ways in which having more muscle mass is very helpful in terms of glucose management and reducing insulin resistance over time. Gina asked, what are my thoughts on keto bricks? Hold on, I have to take a sip of something. All right, then. I love keto bricks as a concept. What is a keto brick? People will ask. I don't have them here in front of me, but it's a brick about this big that's made from a mix of fat, primarily cocoa butter. And I am a big fan of cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is very high in stearic acid, and stearic acid is a type of saturated fat, but it's a type of saturated fat that has actually been shown to be really, really beneficial. So I'm a big fan of that. Stearic acid is hard to use. It at room temperature, it's very hard. And so that's why it's good to make things like keto bricks because it's very firm at room temperature. Anyway, you can also find it in cocoa butter because cocoa butter is the main ingredient there. It's basically some fats mixed with some protein powders. Some of their flavors are whey protein, I think, and then some of their flavors are a vegan protein powder. Remember I said earlier, I'm not as much a fan of vegan protein powders as a good source of protein, but that's okay because I don't look at keto bricks as a source of protein primarily. Primarily, they're a source of fat. So generally speaking, I love keto bricks to be used in a specific way, which is I actually take a keto brick. I cannot bite it. It's too tall for my mouth. I mean, I could, but I worry I have a chipped front tooth and I protect that situation so it doesn't chip worse. So I melt it down. I take out a Pyrex, a measuring cup, put the brick in it, put it in the microwave, cook it for 30 seconds, stir, cook for 30 seconds, stir. By the time it's all melted, then I just pour it into some silicone little mini cupcake molds. I pour it into 10, then each one of them is 100 calories, which is a tenth of a brick. It's like 80% fat. And so it's like a shelf stable way to have a little bitty fat bomb. That's the way I look at it. And yes, it does have a little bit of protein in it, but not very much. And so I generally would say like a great meal is to like have a steak. And then if you want a little bitty extra fat added to it, you can have a little dessert of a keto brick bomb there. So that's how I use them. I think they're great. I think they're especially great for travel. I don't love all the flavors because I don't love all flavors. We all have our preferences, but I very much like the peanut butter flavor, which I like to sprinkle a little chocolate chips in, like keto chocolate chips. And then I also really like, what's it called? Coconut almond, because it's got a little texture. I like the texture. So it's fun. And the nice thing about melting them down is you can add stuff in there. So if you want to add a little coconut or a little texture to things, you can. So you do you. But I support them and I like them. And Keto Savage family is their family. They're awesome people. So Cheryl says I use butter. I think you're probably talking about keto chow shakes. I think I'm behind. Ruby says my blood pressure has gone up recently. I have been keto carnivore and lost 65 pounds. Do you know of any reason? Congratulations on the 65 pounds lost. I don't know why it would be going up recently. I would definitely look into your sleep. Also, if you're of a certain age where menopause has crept in, hormones can affect blood pressure. So look at that. Or crept out, as the case may be. Lisa says, Kim, I get this pain in my sides. Okay. I'm not a doctor. I'll read it though. I get this pain in my sides, like under my ribs, if I turn a certain way or laugh. The pain lasts for like 10 seconds. It hurts so bad. I've had a CT scan and the doctor said she couldn't find anything wrong. Maybe a muscle contraction makes me stop in my tracks. Both sides, not just one side, because if it's one side, that can be helpful diagnostically, because you have different organs on different sides. I don't know. No idea. Sorry. Maybe talk to a physical therapist. That would be my next thing to check. Because if it is muscular in nature, they might be able to tell you what might be tight and making that happen. Nancy says, Maria Emmerich likes Further Foods collagen. What about you? I haven't tried it. So it's probably great, but I haven't tried it. Patricia said, knee replacement coming up in January, total knee degeneration, torn meniscus and ACL at 61 and disabled. Watching my muscle mass go in a downward trajectory. Can I increase my protein, decrease fat, or adjust macros in a way that could help me prepare for that surgery and recovery? Meeting surgeon Friday, would love to make any suggestions. Hey, Patricia. Yeah, definitely eating sufficient protein is very, very helpful in terms of loss of muscle mass. However, there is nothing that will fix complete inactivity. So my thought is, do you have a pool that you have access to? At this time of year, probably an indoor pool would be better. You can walk in the pool. It's not hard on your joints, and there's some resistance against the water. So that is my suggestion. Or contact a physical therapist, talk to your surgeon, find ways that you can use your muscles without impacting the knee, which may look like doing exercises in a seated position where you're still working those muscles a bit, because your muscles need to know that you need them. If they don't think you need them, they go. So, but in terms of preparing for surgery, I would say definitely increase protein in and around the time of surgery, and especially post-surgery. Definitely is required for healing. Remember that protein is required for structure, right? Carbs and fat are energy sources, and protein is primarily a structural source. And if you have had some destruction, like a surgery, you need more building material to reconstruct the body. And so protein going up is an absolute. Gemma says Soleil water is a good source of sodium for most people. I don't like it because I don't like drinking salt water. It makes me glurg. Strangely, Element or Redmond's Relight, their drink mixes don't do that. I think it's the sweetness added to it and the flavor, but just salty water, I don't like it. But it's a good way to get sodium in your diet. Pinky says, I am really iron deficient. Any questions about how any thoughts on how I can absorb more iron? So one of the things that I used to be very, very iron deficient as well. I was deficient in a lot of things, even though, and it was, so my doctor was like, eat more meat. And I was like, I eat a lot of meat, because I was already keto at that time and red meat is my primary love. And what ended up happening was I eventually went carnivore for 6 months. And after that, my absorption of a lot of things went up considerably. And my theory is that I had some gut problems that needed to be cleared up, and going carnivore helped some of those gut issues. This is, again, just a theory. And then in the aftermath, I was better at absorbing things. But if you're iron deficient, you really need to work on that. Being iron deficient can actually stop you from being able to lose much body fat, just so you know. So make sure you're getting your iron in properly. And so if you are in fact iron deficient, you should definitely supplement until you can figure out how to become more iron absorbent. Jane, how do you know if you're magnesium deficient? Will a blood test tell you? That is a fabulous question, Jane. No is the answer. So when they test your magnesium levels or your potassium levels or your sodium levels, they're testing for the most part serum, which means blood in your bloodstream, not in your veins, right? So sometimes they can test things and they'll call it arterial or venous sample. That means it came from your artery or your veins, but generally speaking, serum, is just going to be in your bloodstream. Because the body is trying to keep you alive, sodium, magnesium, potassium, all the electrolytes in your blood are kept very tightly regulated. Because if it goes out of range much at all, you will die. And so your body is very good at keeping you alive. And what it will do if you're significantly deficient in your electrolytes is pull it out of your bones, pull it out of your organs, pull it out of everywhere to keep it in your bloodstream. So your serum blood test is not going to tell you, for the most part, if you're deficient in any of these things. It will tell you if you're very sick. If it's out of range, that's an emergency. The only time any of these electrolytes have been out of range was when I had my appendix out and I was in the hospital and they gave me some potassium because they're like, your potassium's low. Like something generally pretty bad has to be happening for it to be low in your bloodstream. And so, no, a blood test won't tell you. I think ultimately, you would simply add magnesium to your routine and see if you feel better, if you notice any improvements. That's my general thing. All right. Maureen says, got a lab back. If I'm in ketosis, shouldn't a lab urine analysis show ketones? No, not necessarily. So a lab urine analysis shows your level of acetoacetate. So when we produce ketones, the primary ketone we produce is called beta hydroxybutyrate, and that's what's available in our blood. So if we do a keto mojo or a finger prick, that's going to show our level of beta hydroxybutyrate. There is another form of ketone called acetoacetate. And acetoacetate is what is excreted in our urine. So when they're testing urine for ketones, what they're testing for is acetoacetate. Now, acetoacetate is different than beta hydroxybutyrate. There's a lot more beta hydroxybutyrate, generally speaking. And what we excrete in our urine of acetoacetate is tightly controlled. So what ends up happening is when we first get into ketosis, we sorry, I just had a pop up and it threw me off. When we first get into ketosis, we're producing a fair amount of acetoacetate. At least most of us are. And then your body, though, it doesn't want to waste it. And so over time, you make less because it only wants to make what you need and it doesn't want to waste any. And what's in your urine is 100% waste. And so the body will down regulate how much it makes, which means that over time, there's less in your urine. So if you've been in ketosis for a long time, it is highly likely that you might show Zippo on your urine analysis ketone strips. Now, some people continue to waste a little bit and have dribs and drabs of it in their urine, and so they'll still test positive. But a negative urine analysis on ketones does not mean you're not in ketosis. And that's why I don't recommend the urine analysis strips because they are random. Anna says, I have lost 60 pounds this year. Congratulations. But my HbA1c is still 6.1. I assume you mean 6.1, not 61. I am stalled right now in my past 3 weeks. Maybe cortisol is all over the place, not sleeping. I'm carnivore. My mom passed. Oh, I'm so sorry, Anna. So stress will keep your blood sugar high, even as your weight comes down. So the thing I will say is that sometimes our blood sugar will remain high, as you can see, due to stress. Cortisol increases your blood sugar, so all of that is going on. The thing, Anna, though, that I will say is if you've been eating a lot less carbs, I assume, and your A1C doesn't come down at all, I would get follow-up blood tests to look at what your C-peptide is. C-peptide is a blood test that your doctor can order for you. And what it will tell you is how much insulin is your pancreas producing on average. Because the reality is, even if you're eating lower carb and you're still seeing fairly high blood sugars, my question is, do you make enough insulin? So I would look at that. Um, Tamara says, I'm now down 67 pounds, another 30 to go. Congratulations. I'm currently stalled, however, I'm starting to experience loose skin. I'm nervous to start weights as I'm kind of scared of the scale. Any ideas? Do it. Use weights. Just get over it. There's nothing better for your health. Nothing better for your health. Ladies, if you want to be healthy old people, because we're all going to be old people, God willing, right? I'm not saying you're old now, but if you want to be healthy when you're older, again, even whatever age you are now, we're all getting older. And you don't want to be put in a home because you can't get out of your chair when you're 85, which is what happens. The number one piece of people, the number one reason people end up needing care is not because of a big health problem. It's because they are not strong enough to get through the day anymore and do what their body requires. If you don't want that to be you, lift weights. Okay. That's my advice to everyone. You don't have to start any crazy routine. Just start something. Kat, new subscriber, love my channel. Thank you. Welcome. Aside from education required for being a keto coach, what other education do I recommend? Good question. Just being curious, to be perfectly honest, Kat. Be curious, read studies. If you don't know how to interpret the studies when you're reading them, learn about how to read studies and interpret them. So, and then, like, I mean, I don't have a degree in science, but like I took biology and chemistry in college and I've taken advanced courses. So I make sure that I'm not the smartest cookie. I have friends that are much smarter than me, but I try to listen to them. And if I don't understand what they're saying, or if I watch a YouTube and I don't understand what it's saying, I figure out what it's saying by doing research, doing readings to try and understand. So just keep working on it. Um, and then, if you want to be a keto coach out there in the world, knowing how to do things like do things on the internet and market yourself, they're helpful. If that was your question, if you want to be a keto coach, and have people follow you. Tina says, I love my faux frosty. Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. Wait. Shari says, Kim, have I tried the triple B and E eating yet? Have to say it's harder than I thought. No, I mean, I've done carnivore in the past and I've done beef only. So basically, but I haven't done it recently and I don't plan to do it recently because I'm kind of happy with what I'm doing right now. But I think it's a great thing to do. It's a great thing to try. One, it's a mental challenge. Two, it can be a great reset. Three, it can be very helpful if perhaps you have a food intolerance you don't know about. So lots of things that are great about it. But yeah. Darcy says, I know that you aren't that big into IF. I'm totally a supporter of IF. I think that not eating while you're sleeping is very important. Um, but what are your thoughts on how one should 48 hours or longer fast for autophagy? So, like I said, I'm actually support IF. I think there's a period of time that is individual to each person that they probably shouldn't be eating a day, some digestive rest, that kind of thing, very helpful. I just don't know that it's the same for everybody. And then I don't know that everyone needs to do 48-hour or longer than 24-hour fasts. Kind of depends on the person. So there's it seems like there's this myth out there that long fasts are the only way to achieve autophagy. Do you know that black coffee increases autophagy? Did you know that exercise increases autophagy? So there are lots of ways to have increased autophagy, not just long fasts. That being said, if somebody wanted to do once a month 40, and then the other question I should say is, are you lean or do you still have a lot of excess body fat? Somebody who is lean cannot do long fasts versus somebody who has excess body fat sometimes can do longer fasts. So it's very dependent. But I like to point out, people think autophagy can only be achieved by long fasts, that it's not the only way to do it. Terry says, a friend of mine who lifts a lot says it's hard for a woman to get big bulky muscles. It's impossible for a woman not taking testosterone to get big bulky muscles or other steroids. Women just don't have the ability for the most part, unless you're like a genetic anomaly, to get big bulky muscles, generally speaking. Literally, like, gaining more than a couple pounds of muscle a year is very challenging. And so, you're not going to get, you're going to look, when people, women say toned, there's no such thing as toned. It's added muscle that makes you look more toned. So yeah, you won't get big and bulky. Chow CEO. Dr. Ken Berry had a wonderful YouTube video on HbA1c in the last week. A hack he said to lower it was to donate blood. All right, there. Matthew says, "Are you a Muslim?" No, I'm not. I'm half Christian, half Jewish. I support everyone's individual religious whatevers, but not Muslim. Let's see. It's the next question. Thanks, Kim. I am 6 days into triple B and E and keto carnivore and not a fan. Basically at goal doing with family members. Yeah, I would say it might be challenging for some of you, but that's great that you're doing it in solidarity with some of your family members. Make sure you're eating enough. If you're at goal weight, and you're not, if you're under eating, you're going to feel crummy. And sometimes if we're like, I like variety and I'm not getting variety, we can under eat and then you'll feel crummier. So there you go. Anywho, get weird questions sometimes. So we're gonna come into the home stretch here. So does anyone have any questions as we wrap up today? Helene, I'm starting keto for a second time. It has been about a year. Last time I was at a point where I wasn't hungry yet barely eating. So coming home trying to eat when not really wanting to, do I have to count calories? So one of the things that I think is very important in all diets, but especially, well, not especially, just all diets, there is something that is called metabolic adaptation. So, metabolic adaptation is just the reality that our body is trying to keep us alive. And in terms of the best way to keep us alive, one of those things is that it will adjust our metabolism or metabolic rate, which you could interpret as the rate at which we use energy from our food. To meet us where we're at. So you'll find that if you significantly overeat, you'll gain weight, but your metabolic rate goes up a bit. So even though you're gaining weight, your metabolic rate is increasing, and there's a balance. So some people, you can overeat a certain amount and actually your metabolic rate will go up to meet it without you gaining significant weight. Hey, Neisha. Neisha and I are going to be talking after this call, so she's checking up on me. Where did it go? And so the thing is, if you are chronically under eating for very long periods of time, you're eating way too low, you're eating way less than you need. What happens is, yeah, you'll lose weight for a while, but what happens is your metabolic rate will turn the dial down so that you're using less calories, you're using less energy. And that means that eventually you'll be like, why am I eating so little and not seeing more weight loss? Shouldn't I see more weight loss with this little I'm eating? But basically, you're like in the basement and you can't get any lower. And that's not really a good situation for most people to be in. So I really want people to not chronically undereat. Make sure they're eating enough. It keeps your metabolism healthier. That being said, I think you can eat less for short periods of time. That's what I do when I try to lose a little more body fat. I eat less for a short period of time, then I come back up into maintenance. Then I might eat less for a short period of time, come back up into maintenance. I think that is much saner and better for our bodies than just chronically under eating when we get an adaptation that we probably don't want. No, you're not late. Anna says, I did the beef salt and water challenge for September. Lost 12 pounds. Well, congratulations, Anna. That's great. Let's see. Did I miss a question? Angie said, I know you'd asked about my weight loss. So update. I'm now down 27 pounds and so glad I did my measurements. I've lost 20 inches. Ah, congratulations. That's awesome. All right. Wow, I talked a lot tonight. I always talk a lot though. Hopefully this was useful to you. If you're watching on YouTube, please do me a big favor and subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook, please do me a big favor and like, I guess it's liking, follow, like or follow. Then you'll get more notifications, hopefully. And we can keep having fun every week. And so that would be awesome. I would love it. And I will talk to you guys next week. Take care. Enjoy. Bye.